And good to be here again, Juan. I wanted to start off today saying just thank you for all the insight that you're providing, that we're providing to everyone, including myself, because every week I feel like I'm growing massively from throughout the editing process, also just speaking here, getting it firsthand. It really feels amazing. And we were speaking prior to this, and a lot of what we were just talking segues very precisely into kind of what I wanted to start open up today's conversation with. And I feel like it's what we were speaking on as far as people having misconceptions out in the world. And so I wanted to open up by saying earlier in the week I was grabbing an insight from another conversation. A guy named Paul Rosillo. He lives in the Amazon very very often. He's a New Yorker, but he's got a lot of incredible insight. He's been living out there since about 18 years old. He's probably like in his 30s yet now. I don't know exactly his age, but he was having a conversation that was very interesting, and I was able to grab a little bit of an insight, and I know that you could expand on it for everybody else. So I'm curious to know what you feel about it. Basically, what he was saying is he was giving this analogy, or like he was explaining the moment he first grabbed an anaconda that he could not fit his hands around. He was 20 years old, and he like, again, he couldn't grab his hands around it, so he has no measurement for how big this thing was. But essentially, he was explaining how in the world, because he studies anacondas and he lives practically amongst these creatures in the wilderness, he has an understanding that most people don't of these things, in which you would observe them and you would think, wow, like we have this understanding from the society maybe outside here where it's like, stay away from them, they're dangerous, XYZ. And who knows who came up with this concept, but clearly they're not in tune as much as this individual is as to what their nature actually is. And from the experience of catching what he says is upwards of 80 different anacondas throughout the course of his time down there, he has a very different understanding of what they are. And that 9 times out of 10, if he's trying to observe one of these things in the wild and he's approaching them, if they get a glimpse of him, even from the shadow of a distance, they're quick to run away. They don't want any confrontation. Quite the stark contrast of what we think something that massive would do, where it's like, oh, they eat people and this, that, or the third. So again, this idea of people have a skewed understanding of certain things in the world. And so that to me is it kind of puts the nail in the head for me. It's lit off fireworks in my mind where it's like, wow, how many other things in this world do I have a skewed misconception of that I don't I'm practically agreeing with, but without enough knowledge to understand like the reality of those things. So maybe I don't know what you grasp from it, but if you could add a bit to that understanding, to that insight, I feel like it'd be something of value.
There's a lot there. And the reason why there's a lot there, number one, his skill, observation. We all remember the movie Anaconda. So that has already been what we've been exposed to that understanding. But that understanding comes from the director of the movie, from his imagination. But it's a movie, it's a story. Nobody is gonna go watch a movie that doesn't have suspense, action, emotions. But that's what we've been exposed to. How many people actually went and read a book about anacondas after watching that movie? And any single time we probably been exposed to them has been in some type of TV format. And in those TV formats, they've had their roles. So society, the world, has made a role for anacondas, which is what we mostly know. Now, this gentleman, Paul, what he did was find his meaning to his life. he found an environment that spoke to his heart. Hence him living in the Amazon. But it's like when I read a book, I can read a book on skills of exercising. I can read a book on skills of communication. I can read a book on a skill of flexibility. But until I actually put that information to practice, I don't know it. It's not inside of me. I can read a book about love, but if I've never experienced love, I'm not going to understand what someone who has experienced love understands from that book. Because ultimately, our perceptions, our realities are based upon what we've been exposed to. So what Paul did was he went and he expanded his being and his understanding of anacondas by observing them, studying them, and not reading something and automatically making that the belief that he had on what he read. He went to actually go experience. So at the beginning, he went, he observed. He probably was fearful. But because he was in the Amazon, he found people that actually have knowing anacondas. And I'm sure they started to teach him about anacondas. But we're talking about in person. I can watch a learning video on TV, but it's a difference being in person. Experiencing that up front, what does that do? My body now knows it. My body's, because I got to see anaconda and that's the distance, my body, my senses, they felt it. My emotions were next to it. So he was able to decipher what anacondas really are like. And then as he observed, he started studying, he started taking notes down, he started building. And as he built, what he ended up doing was now putting his thesis, all that information, his idea all together. And when he put it all together, now he's sharing with the world. The way we are sharing our insights of what we do at Gift Fitness, of what we've experienced together, of all the insights that have been born from us doing together, now they are putting that together and they're bringing that to us. Which then extends what we understand about knowing. Which then extends what we do when it comes to knowing.